Rain hammered against bulletproof windows while Manhattan's elite drowned themselves in champagne and lies. Vivian Hale stood frozen in emerald silk, watching her husband flirt with another woman like she didn't exist. 4 years of marriage, 4 years of being invisible. Tonight, she would disappear for real, but not the way anyone expected. One text message, one phone call from the wrong man. And suddenly, the lonely housewife everyone ignored was about to discover that her husband's family wasn't just wealthy. They were dangerous. This is the story of how a broken marriage led to forbidden love, and how walking away from everything safe became the most dangerous decision of her life. Hit that like button, comment what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story travels. And let me show you what happens when you fall in love with the one man you were never supposed to touch. Patase? The Imperial Regent Hotel rose above Fifth Avenue like a monument to excess, all glass and steel and arrogance. Inside the grand ballroom, crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across faces that cost more to maintain than most people earned in a year. Vivian Hale stood near the bar nursing warm champagne that tasted like regret, watching her husband work the room like she was a coat he'd checked at the door. Damian Vale moved through the crowd with the easy confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Tall, handsome in that sharp-featured way that photographs well, expensive suit tailored to hide the softness creeping into his midsection. He had his hand on the small of some brunette's back, lingering there, proprietary, while she laughed at whatever charming lie he was currently selling. Vivian's reflection stared back at her from the mirrored wall behind the bar. Emerald silk dress that Damian had picked out because it photographed well. Hair styled by someone whose name she couldn't remember. Makeup applied like armor. She looked like she belonged here. She'd never felt more invisible in her life. Mrs. Vale. The bartender's voice cut through her spiral. Another? She shook her head, set the glass down. The sound of it hitting marble felt too loud, too final. 4 years ago, she'd met Damian Vale in a Manhattan bookstore during a thunderstorm. He'd been a third-year law student at Columbia with messy hair and coffee-stained notebooks, talking about changing the world through criminal justice reform. They'd spent 6 hours in that cafe arguing about Dostoevsky while rain drummed against the windows. He'd quoted Sartre and kissed her like she was the only real thing in a city full of ghosts. 3 months later, they were married at City Hall. 2 months after that, she met his family. And everything changed. The Vales didn't just have money. They had the kind of wealth that came with armed drivers and lawyers on retainer and rooms that went quiet when they entered. Damian's father, Vincent, owned what everyone politely called a shipping empire. His mother had died years ago under circumstances no one discussed. The family compound in New Jersey looked like something out of a Gothic novel, all wrought iron gates and security cameras disguised as garden lights. Damian transformed the moment they moved into the penthouse his father bought them. The law student who'd quoted poetry became a man who checked his phone during dinner, who canceled plans without explanation, who treated their marriage like a networking opportunity he'd already maximized. The sex stopped first, then the conversations, then the pretense that either of them was happy. Now he didn't even bother lying about where he spent his nights. Vivian watched him lean close to the brunette, whispering something that made her throw her head back laughing. His hand slid lower. The woman didn't move away. Something inside Vivian's chest cracked like ice. She set down her champagne and walked toward the exit. Nobody stopped her. Nobody noticed. She was a ghost in emerald silk, drifting through a party that had already forgotten she existed. The November air hit her like a slap. Rain came down in sheets, soaking through her dress in seconds. She stood on the sidewalk while taxis hissed past, their headlights turning the wet pavement into rivers of gold. Her phone buzzed. Damian. Where did you go? The investors are asking about you. Not, are you okay? Not what's wrong. Just irritation that she'd stopped playing her part. Her fingers shook as she typed back. Vivian. I'm done. Don't come home tonight. She sent it before she could overthink it. Then she turned off Fifth Avenue and started walking. The city swallowed her whole. Neon signs bled color into puddles. Steam rose from subway grates like the city was exhaling ghosts. She walked for hours, her heels clicking against wet concrete, her dress clinging to her like a second skin she wanted to shed. Eventually, she found herself in the financial district, standing outside a diner that looked like it hadn't been renovated since the 80s. Cracked vinyl booths, fluorescent lights that buzzed like dying insects, coffee that probably tasted like burnt rubber. It was perfect. She slid into a corner booth and ordered black coffee from a waitress who didn't ask questions. The warmth of the cup against her palms felt more intimate than anything she'd experienced in months. Her phone lit up again. Damien. You're being dramatic. Come back. Damien. Vivian. Stop acting like a child. Damien. Fine. Stay gone. See if I care. She stared at the messages until they blurred. 4 years of her life reduced to 3 texts and a shrug. The diner door chimed. She didn't look up. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her thumb hit the green button. Mrs. Vale. The voice was low, controlled, familiar in a way that made her spine straighten. This is Vincent. Vivian's breath caught. She'd spoken to Damien's father maybe a dozen times in 4 years. Always brief, always formal. He was the kind of man who made rooms feel smaller just by existing. How did you get this number? I pay attention to the people my son doesn't. A pause. You left the gala. How did you? I pay attention, he repeated. Where are you? She should hang up. She should tell him to go to hell. Instead, she heard herself say, a diner, Wall Street. Stay there. Someone's coming for you. I don't need sus. There are things you deserve to know about your husband, about this family, but not over the phone. The line went dead. Vivian sat frozen, the coffee going cold in her hands. Every rational instinct screamed at her to leave, to go back to the penthouse, pack her things, disappear into whatever life women built after their marriages imploded. But she stayed. 23 minutes later, a black SUV pulled up outside the diner window. The driver who emerged wore a tailored coat that didn't quite hide the weapon holstered at his hip. He scanned the street with the kind of awareness that came from military training or something worse. He entered the diner, made eye contact with Vivian, and nodded once. Mrs. Vale. Mr. Vale is expecting you. Her hand shook as she slid out of the booth. Where? Home. The drive took 40 minutes through rain that turned the Garden State Parkway into a blur of red taillights and gray nothing. The driver didn't speak. The radio played soft jazz that felt wrong for the knot of dread tightening in Vivian's stomach. They turned off the highway onto private roads that wound through woods too perfect to be natural. Then the gates appeared, wrought iron, 15 feet tall, cameras tracking their approach. The Vale estate. She'd been here exactly 3 times. Once for a stilted family dinner when she and Damien first got engaged. Once for a Christmas party where she'd spent 4 hours making small talk with people whose names she forgot immediately. Once for Vincent's 60th birthday, where Damien had gotten drunk and they'd fought in the car all the way home. The house rose from manicured lawns like something out of a darker century. Georgian architecture, all symmetry and cold elegance. Lights glowed in windows that seemed to watch her approach. The driver opened her door. She stepped onto gravel, her ruined heels sinking slightly. This way, Mrs. Vale. He led her not to the main entrance, but around the side, through gardens that probably looked beautiful in daylight. Now they were just shadows, and the whisper of wind through bare branches. They entered through a side door into a hallway she didn't recognize. Marble floors, dark wood paneling, paintings that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. The driver stopped at a heavy oak door, knocked twice, and stepped aside. Come in, Vivian. Vincent Vale's voice carried through the wood like smoke. She pushed the door open. The library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with leather-bound books that looked actually read, not decorator purchases. A fireplace large enough to stand in, flames crackling against the rain-lashed windows. Wingback chairs that probably dated to the Gilded Age. And Vincent, standing by the fire with a tumbler of what looked like scotch. He was in his late 50s, silver threading through dark hair he wore longer than fashion dictated. Tall, broader through the shoulders than Damien would ever be. There was something old world about him, not the cultivated elegance of generational wealth, but something harder, more earned. He looked at her the way no one had in months, like she was actually there. You're soaked, he said. Elena will bring you something dry. I don't understand what I'm doing here. Vincent took a slow sip of scotch, his eyes never leaving hers. You told my son you were done. That's between me and Damien. Nothing involving my son happens in a vacuum. He gestured to one of the chairs. Sit, please. She remained standing. What do you want, Mr. Vale? Vincent. He set down his glass with a soft click. And what I want is to tell you the truth. The truth my son has been hiding from you for 4 years. I know he cheats. Everyone knows he cheats. That's not the truth I'm talking about. Vincent moved to the window, looking out at gardens drowning in rain. You think you married into a shipping family? Yes. You didn't. He turned to face her. You married into something else entirely. The fire popped. Rain hammered the windows. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed midnight. Vivian's voice came out smaller than she wanted. What are you saying? The Vale Shipping Corporation is real. We move legitimate cargo up and down the East Coast. But that's not where the real money comes from. It's not where the real power is. Her throat went dry. Then where? Vincent's expression didn't change. Everywhere the law pretends not to see. Everything your husband was too much of a coward to tell you about before he dragged you into this family. The room tilted slightly. Vivian gripped the back of the nearest chair. You're careful with whatever word you're about to use. His voice stayed level, almost gentle. Words have consequences, especially in this house. She forced herself to meet his eyes. Is my husband in danger? Damien? Vincent's laugh was bitter. No. Damien is too useless to be dangerous. He plays at being part of this world while hiding behind law degrees and charity galas. He's the acceptable face we show the world, while the real work happens in rooms he's never been allowed to enter. Then why did you let him marry me? I didn't let him do anything. He made his own choice, just like you're about to make yours. What choice? Vincent moved closer. Not threatening, but she was suddenly aware of how much space he took up, how the air seemed thicker when he was near. You can leave, tonight. I'll have my lawyers draw up divorce papers. You'll receive a settlement substantial enough to start over anywhere in the world. I'll make sure Damien doesn't contest it. You'll be free. Or you stay. Not as Damien's wife, that marriage is already over. We both know it. But as part of this household, protected, valued, given the freedom to become whoever you want to be instead of the ghost you've been pretending to be for 4 years. Vivian's laugh came out sharp, almost hysterical. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything. Why? Why would you want me here? Something shifted in Vincent's expression. For just a moment, the controlled facade cracked, and she saw something underneath. Something raw and human and desperately lonely. Because I've watched my son break you piece by piece for 4 years, and I'm tired of pretending I don't see it. He paused. Because my wife died 12 years ago, and this house has been a mausoleum ever since. Because everyone in my life wants something from me, except you. You just wanted to be seen. And because... He stopped himself. Because what? Vincent turned back to the fire. Because I think you deserve better than the life my son gave you. And because I'm selfish enough to want to give it to you. The clock ticked. The fire crackled. Outside, the storm showed no signs of breaking. Vivian should have run. Should have called a cab, filed for divorce, disappeared into whatever normal life was still possible for someone who'd stumbled into the wrong family. But she'd been invisible for so long. And Vincent Vale saw her. If I stay, she said carefully, what exactly does that mean? It means you live here, in the East Wing. There are guest suites that haven't been used in years. It means you're under my protection. It means Damien doesn't get to hurt you anymore. And what do you get? Vincent's smile was sad. Maybe I get to remember what it feels like when someone in this house isn't afraid of me. A door slammed somewhere in the house. Voices echoed down marble hallways, angry, male, familiar. Damien. Vincent's expression hardened instantly. He can't know you're here. Not yet. Why not? Because my son is weak, and weak men are dangerous when they feel humiliated. Vincent moved to the door. Elena will take you upstairs. We'll talk more tomorrow. Vincent. He looked back at her. Why are you doing this? Really? For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, because 4 years ago, I watched my son bring home a woman who reminded me of someone I lost. And I've spent every family dinner since watching him destroy you the same way this world destroyed her. I won't let it happen again. Before Vivian could respond, the library door opened and a small woman in her 60s appeared. Elena, apparently, Vincent's housekeeper. This way, Mrs. Vale. Vivian followed her out a different door, into servants' hallways she'd never known existed. Behind them, she heard Damien's voice echoing through the main hall. Where is she? I know she's here. Where the hell is my wife? Elena led her up a back staircase, through corridors lined with portraits of people long dead. They stopped at a door near the end of the east wing. Mr. Vincent had this prepared earlier, Elena said, opening it to reveal a suite that looked like it belonged in a boutique hotel. Four-poster bed, windows overlooking gardens she couldn't see in the dark, a bathroom with a clawfoot tub. How did he know I'd come? Elena's smile was knowing. Mr. Vincent knows things, always has. She moved to the wardrobe, pulled out a silk robe. There are clothes in here. Probably the wrong size, but they'll do until tomorrow. Bathroom has everything you need. Don't leave this room tonight. The house isn't safe when the young Mr. Vale is upset. She left before Vivian could ask what that meant. Alone, Vivian moved to the window. Below, she could see the gardens, the distant lights of the security gate. Somewhere in this massive house, her husband was raging, and her father-in-law was lying to protect her. She should feel trapped. Instead, for the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe. She stripped off her ruined dress, let it pool on the floor like shed skin. The shower was so hot it almost hurt. She stood under the spray until her skin turned pink, washing off makeup and rain in the last pretense that her marriage had been anything but a slow burial. When she finally emerged, there was a tray on the bedside table. Soup, bread, wine. A note in elegant handwriting, "You're safe here. Sleep. Tomorrow, we talk properly." Vivian ate mechanically, tasting nothing. Then she climbed into the enormous bed and waited for sleep that wouldn't come. Outside her window, the storm raged on. Somewhere in the house, Damien was still shouting. And Vivian lay in the dark, realizing that walking away from her marriage had led her somewhere far stranger and more dangerous than she'd ever imagined. But for the first time in 4 years, she wasn't lonely, and that terrified her more than anything else. Vivian woke to unfamiliar silence. Not the silence of the penthouse, that had always been filled with the hum of climate control and the distant rumble of traffic 40 floors below. This was different, deeper, the kind of quiet that came from thick walls and distance from anything resembling normal life. Gray morning light filtered through curtains she didn't remember closing. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't place where she was. Then it came back in fragments. The rain, the diner, the black SUV, Vincent's voice saying, "You're safe here," like safety was something he could actually promise. She sat up slowly, muscles aching from tension she'd carried all night. The silk robe Elena had left was tangled around her legs. Her phone sat on the nightstand, dark and silent. She reached for it, hesitated, then pulled her hand back. 23 missed calls from Damien, 14 texts, each one angrier than the last. 3 voicemails she didn't want to hear. She turned the phone face down and made herself stand. The bathroom mirror showed someone she barely recognized. No makeup, hair a mess. The expensive highlights Damien had insisted on were growing out, leaving her natural dark blonde visible at the roots. She looked younger, without all the armor. Tired, but younger. She splashed cold water on her face and tried to figure out what the hell she was doing. A soft knock at the door made her freeze. "Mrs. Vale?" Elena's voice, muffled through wood. "I have breakfast and clothes." Vivian wrapped the robe tighter and opened the door. Elena wheeled in a cart loaded with coffee, fruit, pastries that smelled like butter and heaven. Over her arm hung several garments in dry cleaning bags. Mr. Vincent thought these might fit. They were his wife's. He kept some things. Elena's expression gave nothing away. "He'd like to see you in the library when you're ready. No rush?" She left before Vivian could process the weight of what she'd just said. His wife's clothes. The woman who'd died 12 years ago, whose memory still haunted this house like smoke that wouldn't clear. Vivian unzipped the first bag slowly. A cashmere sweater in deep burgundy, designer jeans that looked barely worn, boots that were exactly her size, which shouldn't have been possible but somehow was. She dressed mechanically, her hands shaking slightly. The clothes fit like they'd been made for her, which was impossible. Which meant Vincent had known her measurements, had planned this, had been paying attention in ways that made her skin prickle with something she couldn't name. The coffee was still hot. She drank it black, standing by the window, looking out at gardens that stretched toward woods she couldn't see the end of. The estate was massive. She'd forgotten how massive. Or maybe she'd never really understood it before. Security guards patrolled the grounds in pairs. Cameras tracked their movements from posts disguised as light fixtures. This wasn't just wealth. This was a fortress. She finished the coffee, pulled on the boots, and made herself leave the room. The East Wing hallway was quiet. Portraits of stern-faced people in old-fashioned clothes lined the walls, their eyes following her as she walked. She'd met none of them. Damien had never talked about his family history, had always changed the subject when she asked. Now she understood why. She found the library by memory, her footsteps echoing on marble. The door was open. Inside, Vincent sat in one of the wing-back chairs reading a newspaper like this was any ordinary morning. He looked up when she entered. Something shifted in his expression, recognition maybe, or something deeper. "Those were hers," he said quietly. "Maria's. You're nearly the same size. Elena said you kept some things." "I kept everything." He folded the newspaper and stood. "Coffee?" "I had some upstairs." "Then sit, please." Vivian lowered herself into the chair across from him, acutely aware of how the borrowed clothes felt against her skin. How different this was from every other interaction they'd had. Formal dinners where conversation never went deeper than weather and quarterly earnings. Vincent poured himself coffee from a silver service that probably cost more than her first car. His movements were precise, controlled. Everything about him was controlled. Damien left around 3 a.m., he said. Drunk. Angry. He took the Porsche, which means he probably shouldn't have been driving at all. But he's an adult, technically. "Did he know I was here?" "I told him you'd called me to arrange the divorce, that you were staying at a hotel and didn't want to see him. He believed it because he wanted to believe it. My son has never been perceptive about people who aren't useful to him." The casual cruelty in Vincent's voice when he talked about Damien was unsettling. Not hot anger, just cold assessment, like he was discussing a business competitor instead of his only child. "Why do you hate him?" Vincent's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. "I don't hate him. You talk about him like he's a stranger you're disappointed in, because that's what he is." Vincent set down the cup with a soft click. "Damien is my son by biology, but he's his mother's child in every way that matters. She was—" He stopped himself. "She wasn't Maria. She was my first wife. We divorced when Damien was 6. She raised him in Connecticut with her second husband, brought him back here when he was 16, already shaped by her particular brand of entitlement. He never mentioned his mother was alive. She's not. Cancer, 5 years ago. But by then the damage was done." Vincent's jaw tightened. "I tried. I brought him into the family business, gave him responsibilities, tried to show him what real power looked like. He wanted the money and the respect without understanding what it cost to maintain either. So I let him play lawyer, let him marry you, let him pretend he was normal. And Maria?" The question hung between them like smoke. Vincent stood abruptly, moved to the window. "Maria was my second wife. We had 15 years together. She died in a car accident on the Taconic Parkway." His voice caught, barely perceptible, but there. "She died instantly. They told me it was quick, like that makes it hurt less." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You never knew her." He turned back. "But she would have liked you. You have the same—" He gestured vaguely. "The same refusal to be impressed by money. The same way of looking at people like you're trying to see who they really are underneath everything else." Vivian's throat felt tight. "Vincent, I can't stay here." "Why not?" "Because this is insane, because I don't know you, because your world is—" She gestured helplessly. "I'm not built for this. You're built for whatever you decide to survive." Vincent moved back to his chair, leaned forward with his elbows on his knees. "Let me be clear about something, Vivian. The moment you walked away from Damien, you became a problem. Not for me, for him. His colleagues, his friends, everyone who watches his polished Instagram life is going to ask questions. He'll spin a narrative. You'll be the unstable wife who couldn't handle the pressure. The ungrateful woman who walked away from everything he gave you." Her hands clenched in her lap. "So?" So he'll try to destroy your credibility before you can tell anyone what your marriage actually looked like. He'll freeze your accounts, contest the divorce, make it expensive and ugly and drawn out because that's what weak men do when they lose control. You could stop him. I could. If you stay under my protection, he can't touch you. The divorce happens on my terms. You leave with enough money to start over, and in exchange, what? What do you want from me? Vincent's expression went carefully blank. Company. This house is full of people on my payroll, but I haven't had a real conversation with anyone in years. Everyone wants something. Everyone's calculating angles. But you didn't even know what you married into. You're the first honest thing that's walked through these doors in over a decade. The fire crackled. Outside, one of the security guards spoke into a radio. Vivian forced herself to hold his gaze. And if I say no, then Elena drives you wherever you want to go. I'll have my lawyer start the paperwork. You'll be free. Free and broke and ruined? Probably. Vincent's smile was humorless. I won't lie to you, Vivian. That's the difference between me and my son. He lies because he's weak. I tell the truth because I can afford to. She should leave. Should call a friend, find a lawyer who wasn't on the Vale payroll, figure out how to untangle herself from this family's particular brand of madness. But she had no friends. 4 years married to Damien had isolated her from everyone who'd known her before. No family close enough to help. Her parents had retired to Arizona and hadn't approved of the marriage anyway. No money of her own. Everything was in Damien's name, accounts she'd never questioned because questioning felt like admitting the marriage was already over. Vincent was right. She was trapped either way. At least here, someone saw her. How long? She asked quietly. How long what? How long do I stay? Vincent leaned back, studying her. As long as you want, until the divorce is final, until you figure out who you want to be next. There's no timeline. And Damien? Stays away. If he tries to contact you, my security handles it. If he makes threats, my lawyers handle it. You focus on healing, on becoming whoever you were before my son spent 4 years breaking you down. The words settled over her like snow, cold and quiet, and somehow comforting. Okay, Vivian heard herself say. Okay. Something shifted in Vincent's expression. Relief, maybe, or something more complicated. Then we should discuss logistics. Elena will help you get whatever belongings you need from the penthouse. I'll have my legal team start divorce proceedings. And you, he paused, you should eat something. You barely touched breakfast. I'm not hungry. You need to eat anyway. Vincent stood, offering his hand. Come, let me show you the house properly. If you're going to be here, you should know where everything is. Vivian took his hand without thinking. His palm was warm, calloused in a way that surprised her. These weren't the hands of someone who'd spent his life behind a desk. These were hands that had built things, destroyed things. He pulled her to her feet and didn't immediately let go. They stood there for a moment, too close, his hand still wrapped around hers. Then Vincent stepped back, clearing his throat. This way. He led her through corridors she'd never seen, pointing out rooms with casual commentary that revealed more than he probably meant to. The music room where Maria used to play piano until 2 a.m, the conservatory that hadn't been used since she died, the East Terrace where she'd grown orchids that Vincent still paid someone to maintain, even though he never went out there anymore. Every room was a shrine to a woman 12 years dead. And Vivian was wearing her clothes. You still love her, she said, as they stood in the conservatory, surrounded by blooms that thrived without their caretaker. Always will. Vincent touched one of the orchid petals gently. But love doesn't mean I'm not lonely. It just means I'm particular about who I let fill the space she left. Is that what I'm doing? Filling space? Vincent turned to look at her. Really look at her. No. You're doing something much more dangerous. You're making me remember what it felt like when someone in this house wasn't afraid of me. Before Vivian could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned. Problem? Damien filed a missing persons report. He's telling the police you've been kidnapped. Vincent's voice stayed level. Dramatic, typical. I'll have our lawyers handle it. He thinks I've been... Vivian's laugh came out sharp, almost hysterical. Of course he does. Of course. This is what I meant about weak men being dangerous. Vincent typed something quickly. He can't accept that you left willingly, that you'd choose anything over the life he gave you. So he's creating a narrative where you're the victim and he's the hero trying to save you. What do we do? You do nothing. I handle it. Vincent pocketed his phone. In the meantime, you stay inside the grounds. Don't contact anyone from your old life. Don't post on social media. Let Damien spin his story while we build our case. The conservatory suddenly felt smaller, colder. I'm trapped here. You're protected here. There's a difference. Is there? Vincent moved closer, not threatening but solid, present in a way Damien had never been. I need you to trust me, Vivian, just for a little while. Can you do that? She wanted to say no, wanted to run, to fight, to do anything but surrender control to another man who thought he knew what was best for her. But she was so tired of fighting alone. Okay, she whispered. But Vincent, if you're lying to me, if this is some game, then you walk away. No consequences. I give you my word. His word. Like that meant something. Like promises from men had ever protected her before. But what choice did she have? She nodded once, and Vincent's shoulders dropped slightly, tension releasing. Good. Now come. Elena's making lunch and she gets offended when people skip meals. The next 3 weeks passed in a strange suspension of reality. Vivian lived in the East Wing like a well-kept ghost. Elena brought meals, Vincent's security team screened her calls. Lawyers filed paperwork she signed without fully understanding. The divorce machine churned forward while she existed in a bubble of borrowed time and borrowed clothes. She saw Vincent every day. At first it was just meals. Breakfast in the library, lunch in the sunroom, dinner in the formal dining room that felt absurdly large for 2 people. They talked about books, about the gardens, about everything except the situation they were in. Then the conversations deepened. Vincent told her about growing up in Brooklyn, the son of Italian immigrants who'd built their fortune through means that weren't discussed in polite company. About watching his father die young from a heart attack that was probably a hit made to look natural. About inheriting an empire at 23 and realizing too late what that empire really cost. Vivian told him about studying literature at a state school she'd paid for herself. About teaching high school English until Damien convinced her to quit and focus on being a proper wife. About the slow erasure of herself, piece by piece, until she couldn't remember who she'd been before. They both avoided talking about Maria, or about why Vivian's presence in the house felt less like refuge and more like something neither of them could name. The breaking point came on a Wednesday afternoon in late November. Vivian had been reading in the library when Vincent returned from whatever business he conducted in the city. He looked exhausted, tie loosened, jacket discarded, shadows under his eyes that made him look older than 57. Bad day? She asked. Vincent poured himself scotch and drank half of it in one swallow. Damien's trying to contest the divorce, claims you were coerced, that I've been holding you against your will. That's insane. It's strategic. If he can prove coercion, he gets to control the narrative, paint himself as the victim, maybe even implicate me in something the feds can use. Vivian set down her book. What do you need me to do? Give a deposition. On record. Explaining that you left willingly, that you're here by choice. Vincent drained the rest of his scotch. But once you do that, there's no going back. You'll be declaring war on my son publicly. He won't forgive it. I declared war when I left. This is different. This is choosing me over him, openly. The consequences, I know the consequences. Vivian stood, moved closer. Vincent, I haven't been happy in 4 years. Whatever happens, it can't be worse than the life I already left behind. Something in his expression cracked. Just for a moment, she saw past the control to the loneliness underneath. The man who'd loved and lost and built walls so thick nothing could get through. Except somehow she had. You're stronger than you know, Vincent said quietly. Or stupider. No, strong. He reached out like he might touch her face, then caught himself. Maria used to say that too, that she was stupid for loving me. But she wasn't. She just saw something in me worth saving. Do you need saving? Vincent's laugh was bitter. I'm past saving, but maybe... He stopped himself. Maybe what? Maybe I can still protect something good. Someone good. Before this world ruins her the way it ruins everything else. They stood there in the library, the November afternoon fading into twilight beyond the windows, the fire crackling softly. Vivian should step back. Should remember that Vincent Vale was dangerous in ways she didn't fully understand. That proximity to him came with consequences she couldn't predict. Instead, she moved closer. I'm not Maria. I know. And I'm not some project you get to fix. I know that too. Then what am I to you? Vincent's jaw tightened. A complication I didn't plan for. A problem I can't solve, the first person in over a decade who makes me feel like I'm still human underneath everything else. His hand finally touched her face. Gentle. Hesitant. Like he expected her to pull away. She didn't. The door to the library slammed open. They sprang apart like guilty teenagers. Damien stood in the doorway, drunk and furious, and somehow worse than Vivian remembered. His expensive suit was rumpled, his hair unkempt, his eyes bloodshot and wild. I knew it, he spat. I fucking knew it. Vincent moved instantly, putting himself between Vivian and his son. You're not supposed to be here. It's my family home. It's my house, and you're trespassing. Damien's laugh was ugly. Trespassing? That's rich. You steal my wife, and I'm the one trespassing. I didn't steal anything you hadn't already thrown away. Vincent's voice stayed level, but there was steel underneath. You need to leave. Not without her. Damien's eyes locked on Vivian. Come on. We're going home. Vivian's voice came out steadier than she felt. I am home, and I'm not going anywhere with you. You don't get to decide that. Actually, she does. Vincent took one step forward. Just one. But something in his posture changed, became more predatory. And you need to leave. Now. Before I have security remove you. Security? Damien sneered. You mean you're thugs, you're criminals. How long before Vivian figures out what you really are, Dad? How long before she realizes she traded one prison for another? At least this one has windows that open. The slap came so fast, Vivian almost missed it. One moment, Damien was standing there spewing venom. The next, he was on the floor, Vincent's fist connecting with his jaw with a crack that echoed off the marble. You don't talk to her, Vincent said quietly. You don't look at her. You don't say her name. You signed away that right when you spent 4 years treating her like furniture. Damien struggled to his feet, blood trickling from his split lip. You're going to regret this. I doubt it. I'll tell them everything. The feds, the lawyers, everyone. I'll burn this whole empire to the ground, and you with it. Vincent smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Go ahead. Try. But remember, Damien, you know enough to make trouble, but not enough to actually hurt me. I made sure of that years ago. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Large men with blank expressions and hands that rested casually near concealed weapons. Escort Mr. Damien to his car, Vincent said without taking his eyes off his son. Make sure he understands that his next visit requires an invitation. The guards moved forward. Damien jerked away from their reaching hands. This isn't over. Yes, Vincent said. It is. They dragged Damien out. His voice echoed through the halls, threats and accusations fading as they hauled him toward the main entrance. Then silence. Vincent's shoulders sagged. He looked down at his hand, flexing the fingers. His knuckles were already starting to bruise. I shouldn't have hit him. Vivian's voice came out shaky. He deserved it. That's not the point. I gave him exactly what he wanted. Proof that I'm losing control. Proof that you're getting under my skin. Vincent turned to face her. This is going to get worse before it gets better. You understand that, right? Damien knows how to hurt people, and now he knows the fastest way to hurt me is through you. The weight of that settled over Vivian like a shroud. She thought leaving Damien was the hard part. She'd been wrong. What do we do? Vincent moved to the window, staring out at grounds going dark. We prepare. I'll have security doubled. You don't leave the estate without armed escorts. We accelerate the divorce proceedings. And we... He stopped. We what? Vincent turned back. In the dying light, his eyes looked almost black. We stop pretending this is just about protecting you from Damien, because it's not. Not anymore. Vivian's heart hammered against her ribs. Then what is it about? Vincent crossed the room in 3 long strides, stopped just inches from her. close enough that she could smell scotch and smoke and something darker underneath. It's about the fact that I haven't felt this alive in 12 years, that I wake up thinking about whether you'll join me for coffee, that I catch myself listening for your footsteps in the hallway like a goddamn teenager. His voice dropped lower. It's about the fact that you're wearing Maria's clothes, and it should feel wrong, but instead it feels like... He stopped himself again. Like what? Like she'd approve. Like she'd understand. Vincent's hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone. Like maybe loving someone new doesn't mean I love her less. Vivian couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This isn't... I know all the reasons this is a mistake. You're vulnerable. You're technically still married to my son. I'm 23 years older than you. I'm dangerous in ways you don't fully understand. She kissed him, reached up and pulled him down and pressed her mouth to his before either of them could talk themselves out of it. For one frozen moment, Vincent didn't move. Then something broke inside him, and he was kissing her back, hands tangling in her hair, pulling her against him like he was drowning and she was air. It wasn't gentle, wasn't careful. It was desperation and loneliness, and 4 years of Vivian feeling invisible, colliding with 12 years of Vincent being alone. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. This is a terrible idea. I know. It's going to complicate everything. I know. Damien will use it against us. Let him. Vincent pulled back just enough to see her face. Vivian, if we do this, if we actually do this, there's no going back. You understand that? You'll be painted as the woman who left one veil for another. They'll destroy your reputation, call you a gold digger, a homewrecker, worse. And Damien will make it his life's mission to hurt us both. Vivian thought about the woman she'd been 4 years ago. Young, naive, convinced that love meant making yourself smaller, so someone else could feel bigger. She thought about the woman she'd become. Invisible, lonely, a ghost in her own life. And she thought about who she might become if she stopped being afraid. I don't care, she said. I spent 4 years trying to be what Damien wanted, and it almost killed me. I'm not doing that again. Not for anyone. Not even to avoid scandal. Something fierce and possessive flared in Vincent's eyes. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. Vincent kissed her again. Slower this time, deeper. Like he was memorizing the taste of her, the feel of her, the reality of this moment before it could slip away. When they finally stopped, the library had gone fully dark except for firelight. We should eat, Vincent said against her mouth. We should. Neither of them moved. Outside, November wind rattled the windows. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed 7. And Vivian realized with perfect clarity that whatever happened next, she'd crossed a line that didn't exist on any map. She'd fallen for the one man who could either save her or destroy her completely, and she had no idea which it would be. Winter came early that year, wrapping the Vale estate in ice and silence. Vivian woke in Vincent's bed for the first time on a December morning so cold the windows had frosted over in patterns that looked like skeletal fingers reaching inward. She lay still for a moment, listening to his breathing beside her, trying to reconcile the fact that she'd slept in the arms of a man who terrified half of New York's underworld. He didn't feel terrifying. Not with his face relaxed in sleep, the harsh lines softened, one hand still resting against her hip. Like even unconscious, he needed to know she was real. She slipped out carefully, pulled on one of his shirts that hung to her thighs, and padded barefoot to the window. The grounds looked like a photograph, perfect white snow unmarred except for the tracks of security patrols. Armed men keeping watch while she'd been tangled up in sheets with their boss. The thought should have made her laugh. Instead, it made her stomach twist. Come back to bed, Vincent's voice, rough with sleep. She turned. He was propped up on one elbow, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Possessive, maybe. Or hungry. Or both. It's almost 8. I don't care. Don't you have... She gestured vaguely. Empire things to attend to? Vincent smiled, slow and dangerous. The Empire can wait. Come here. She should resist, should establish boundaries, should remember that sleeping with Vincent Vale complicated an already impossible situation. Instead, she crossed back to the bed and let him pull her down into warmth, and the kind of kissing that made her forget why she'd ever thought leaving was a good idea. They stayed tangled together until almost 10, talking in the broken fragments of people learning each other's bodies and histories simultaneously. Vincent told her about the scar on his shoulder from a knife fight when he was 19. She told him about the time she'd broken her wrist falling off a horse at summer camp. He traced the constellation of freckles across her collarbone. She mapped the silver threading through his dark hair. It felt normal, domestic, like they were just two people falling into something that might become love, instead of a mafia king and his son's abandoned wife playing with fire that could consume them both. The illusion shattered when Elena knocked precisely at 10:15 with coffee and the morning's crisis. "Mr. Vincent?" Her voice carried through the heavy door. "We have a situation." Vincent was dressed and dangerous again in under 3 minutes. Vivian pulled on clothes from the overnight bag she'd brought to his room, her hands shaking slightly as reality crashed back in. In the library, 3 men waited. Vivian recognized one of them, Marco, Vincent's head of security, built like a tank and just as subtle. The other 2 were strangers, well-dressed, cold-eyed, the kind of men who made careers out of not being remembered. "Mrs. Vale," Marco nodded at her. "You should probably hear this too." Vincent's jaw tightened, but he didn't argue. He gestured for her to sit, positioned himself beside her chair like a barrier between her and whatever was coming. "Talk," Vincent said. Marco slid a manila folder across the desk. "Damien's been busy. He's not just talking to divorce lawyers anymore." Vincent opened the folder. His expression didn't change, but something went very still in his eyes. "How long?" "At least 6 weeks, maybe longer. The tail we had on him spotted 3 meetings with Agent Carson in the past month alone." Vivian's stomach dropped. "Agent Carson?" "FBI." Vincent's voice stayed level. "Organized crime division. He's been trying to build a case against the family for years. Never had enough evidence that would stick. Until now," one of the strangers said. "Your son's been feeding him details, shipment schedules, money transfers, names of everyone in your network from here to Baltimore." Vincent closed the folder with a soft snap. "How much does he actually know?" "Enough to hurt you, not enough to destroy you. He was never high enough in the organization to access the real sensitive material." Marco shifted his weight. "But combined with what the feds already suspect, it gives them probable cause for warrants, surveillance, maybe even RICO charges if they get creative." The word hung in the air like poisoned gas. RICO. Racketeering. The kind of federal case that could dismantle entire organizations and send everyone involved to prison for decades. Vivian's voice came out smaller than she wanted. "Why would he do this?" Vincent laughed, bitter and sharp. "Because I chose you. Because hitting me was the closest he's come to standing up to me in his entire pathetic life. Because weak men burn everything down when they realize they'll never be strong enough to build anything worth keeping." "Can we contain it?" Marco asked. "Maybe. If we move fast." Vincent stood, began pacing. "What's Carson's timeline?" "Unknown. But one of our contacts in the Bureau says they're preparing warrant applications. Could be days, could be weeks." "Then we have to assume days." Vincent turned to the 2 strangers. "I want every shipment rerouted through legitimate channels. Every questionable transaction buried under 6 layers of legal paperwork. Everyone in the network goes dark for the next month. No meetings, no calls, nothing the feds can trace." "That's going to cost us," one of them said. "I don't care what it costs. Do it." They nodded and left. Marco lingered. "There's something else," he said carefully. "Damien's also been talking to the Corsaros." Vincent went very still. "Say that again." "Leon Corsaro's people reached out to him 2 weeks ago. We don't know what was discussed, but my son is stupid enough to think making deals with our biggest rival is somehow going to protect him from me." Vincent's hands clenched into fists. "Does Leon know about Vivian?" "We have to assume yes." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Vivian forced herself to speak. "Who is Leon Corsaro?" Vincent turned to look at her. For the first time since she'd known him, she saw something close to fear in his eyes. "Someone who's been trying to take over Vale territory for 5 years. Someone who doesn't play by the old rules. Someone who—" He stopped himself. "Someone you need to be protected from." Marco, I want security tripled. No one comes on or off this property without my explicit approval. And get me everything we have on Leon's movements for the past month. Already on it. Marco headed for the door, paused. Vincent, if Damien's really working with the Corsaros, if he's that far gone, then he's already dead. He just doesn't know it yet. Marco left. Silence crashed down like a wave. Vivian stood slowly, her legs unsteady. What does that mean? He's already dead? Vincent moved to the window, staring out at snow-covered grounds that looked peaceful and felt like a prison. It means my son crossed a line that can't be uncrossed. Working with the feds is one thing. That's just stupidity and wounded pride. But going to the Corsaros, that's treason. In our world, you don't recover from that. Our world. Vivian's voice came out sharp. I'm not part of your world, Vincent. I'm a literature teacher who made bad choices and ended up in a situation I don't understand. Don't pretend You became part of this world the moment you chose to stay. The moment you chose me. Vincent turned to face her. And I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry I let myself want you badly enough that I stopped thinking clearly about what keeping you close would cost. But we're past apologies now. We're into survival. Survival from what? From your son? From the FBI? From mysterious criminals I've never even heard of? From all of it. Vincent crossed to her, gripped her shoulders gently. Listen to me. Leon Corsaro is not like the old families. He doesn't respect tradition or honor or any of the codes that keep this world from descending into complete chaos. He sees weakness and he exploits it. And you, his jaw tightened, you're my weakness now. Damien knows it. Leon knows it, which means you're a target. The words settled over her like a burial shroud. Maybe I should leave. Where? Where would you go that they couldn't find you? Somewhere. Anywhere. I could disappear. You could try. Vincent's hand slid from her shoulders to frame her face. But I'd find you, and if I can find you, so can they. The only place you're safe is here, with me, under my protection. Your protection. Vivian pulled away from his touch. You mean your control. Call it whatever you want, but it's the only thing keeping you alive. The casualness in his voice when he said it, like death was just another logistical problem to be managed, made something crack inside her chest. This was a mistake, she whispered. All of it. I should have just taken your first offer. The money, the clean break, disappearing into whatever life was possible after Damien. But you didn't. You stayed. You chose this. I chose you. I didn't choose... She gestured helplessly. This. Federal investigations and death threats and living like a prisoner in a mansion with armed guards. Vincent's expression went cold. Then leave. I'll have Elena pack your things. I'll give you enough money to start over anywhere in the world. But once you walk out that door, I can't protect you anymore. And when Leon's people find you, and they will find you, you'll be on your own. It wasn't a threat, just a statement of fact delivered in the same tone he might use to discuss the weather. And that was somehow worse. Vivian sank into the nearest chair, her head in her hands. How did this become my life? Vincent knelt in front of her, pulled her hands away from her face so she had to look at him. Because you fell in love with the wrong man twice. First with my son, who was too weak to deserve you. Then with me, who's too dangerous to keep you safe. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. But I'm trying, Vivian. I'm trying to protect you from consequences you didn't sign up for. So I need you to trust me, just a little longer. She wanted to believe that Vincent Vale, criminal, killer, king of an empire built on violence, could actually shield her from the storm gathering on the horizon. But trust was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. The attack came 3 days later. Vivian was in the conservatory with Elena, learning how to care for Maria's orchids. It was early afternoon, weak winter sun filtering through glass walls, the smell of earth and blooms filling air that felt almost normal. Then the shooting started. The first gunshot sounded like a car backfiring. The second made Elena grab Vivian's arm and drag her down behind a marble planter. "Stay low," Elena hissed. "Don't move." More gunshots. Closer now. The glass walls of the conservatory spiderwebbed with cracks. Something hot whined past Vivian's ear, and she realized with numb horror that someone was shooting at them. Security alarms shrieked. Men shouted. Boots pounded across gravel. Elena had a gun in her hand. Vivian didn't even know where it had come from. "When I say run," Elena said, "you run for the house. Don't stop. Don't look back. Understand?" Vivian nodded, her throat too tight for words. "Now!" They ran. Vivian's feet slipped on the pathway. Elena half dragged her forward while bullets chewed up the ground behind them. The conservatory glass shattered completely, raining down in a deadly waterfall. They made it to the side entrance. Marco was there, weapon drawn, face grim. "Inside now!" He shoved them through the door and locked it behind them. Outside, the gunfire intensified. Men screamed. Something exploded with a sound that rattled the windows. Elena pushed Vivian toward the basement stairs. "Safe room. Move." The basement was a maze of corridors Vivian had never seen. Elena navigated them like she'd made this run 1,000 times, which maybe she had. They reached a reinforced steel door. Elena punched in a code and pushed Vivian inside. The safe room was exactly what it sounded like. Concrete walls, filtered air, supplies to last weeks. A bank of security monitors showed different angles of the estate. On screen, Vivian watched Marco and 6 other men exchange fire with attackers she couldn't quite see through the smoke and chaos. "Where's Vincent?" Her voice came out ragged. "On his way. He was in the city." Elena checked her weapon. "He'll be here." "What if—" "He'll be here." They waited. Minutes stretched like hours. On the monitors, the firefight raged. One of the attackers went down. Then one of Vincent's men. The screen showed blood on snow, bodies falling, the kind of violence Vivian had only ever seen in movies. This was real. This was her life now. 45 minutes after it started, the shooting stopped. Elena's radio crackled. "Compound secure. Hostiles retreated. 4 casualties on our side, 7 on theirs." "Vincent?" Elena demanded. Static. Then, "In the library. Wants to see Mrs. Vale." Elena looked at Vivian. "You ready?" "No?" "Good answer. Come on." The house looked like a war zone. Bullet holes in marble. Blood tracked across pristine floors. The smell of gunpowder and smoke hanging in the air like a curse. Vincent stood in the library surrounded by his security team, a tablet in his hands, his expression carved from stone. There was blood on his sleeve, but he didn't seem to notice. He looked up when Vivian entered. Something in his face cracked. "You're not hurt?" "No, Elena." "Good." He turned to Marco. "I want IDs on every single one of the bodies outside. I want to know who sent them, who paid them, and what they thought they'd accomplish. And I want it by tonight." "Already working on it." Vincent dismissed them all with a gesture. The room cleared until it was just him and Vivian. He crossed to her, pulled her against him hard enough that she felt the tremor running through his body. "I almost lost you." Vivian's hands fisted in his shirt. "What's happening? Why would anyone—" "Because Leon wants me to know he can reach you, that my protection doesn't mean anything, that if he wants you dead, you're dead." Vincent pulled back to look at her. This was a message, not a serious attempt. If they'd really wanted you gone, they would have used more men, better planning. This was Leon showing me he knows my weakness. Then give him what he wants. End this. Make whatever deal. "There is no deal." Vincent's voice went flat. "The only thing Leon wants is everything I have. My territory, my business, my life. And now that he knows about you, he'll use you to break me. The question is whether I let him." The words hung between them like a blade. "What does that mean?" Vincent turned away, poured himself scotch with hands that shook slightly. "It means I have choices to make. Bad choices. The kind that cost pieces of my soul I thought I'd already sold." "Vincent, I could send you away, far away. New identity, new life. Enough money that you'd never have to worry. You'd be safe. But I'm selfish enough that the thought of losing you makes me want to burn this city to the ground." He drank deeply. "So instead, I'm going to end this war, permanently. And you need to not ask me what that means because you won't like the answer." Vivian's throat closed. "You're going to kill him." "I'm going to do what's necessary to protect what's mine. I'm not property." Vincent looked at her over the rim of his glass. "No, you're so much worse.
You're the thing I love more than power, more than the empire, more than my own life, which makes you the most dangerous weakness I've ever had. The confession should have felt romantic. Instead, it felt like a death sentence. What if I asked you not to? Vivian's voice came out small. What if I asked you to find another way?
Then I'd say you don't understand the world I live in. There is no other way. This ends with Leon dead or me dead. Those are the only options. There has to be it. There doesn't. Vincent set down his glass with a soft click. I know you want to believe I'm better than this, that love can redeem me or whatever fairy tale you're telling yourself. But I'm not a good man, Vivian. I've never been a good man. I've just been very good at protecting the people I love from seeing what I really am. I know what you are. You know pieces, the parts I've let you see, but you don't know what... He stopped himself. It doesn't matter. What matters is keeping you alive. Everything else is negotiable. The tablet on his desk buzzed. Vincent glanced at it, went very still. What? He turned the screen toward her. Security footage. Dated from 2 hours ago. Damien, walking into a restaurant in Manhattan, sitting down across from a man Vivian didn't recognize, but Vincent clearly did based on the way all the color drained from his face. Leon Corsaro. They talked for 47 minutes. The footage was silent, but the body language was clear. Damien was selling something, and Leon was buying. Son of a bitch. Vincent's voice came out barely above a whisper. He told them about the safe room, about Elena's patrol schedules, about... His fist slammed into the desk hard enough to crack the wood. He helped them plan the attack. His own father's house. He helped them try to kill you. Vivian's knees went weak. She sank into the nearest chair. Why? Why would he... Because he's his mother's son. Petty and vindictive and stupid enough to think Leon will actually protect him after this is over. Vincent's hands were shaking now, with rage, with something that looked almost like grief. He signed his own death warrant. Leon will use him and then discard him like the trash he is. You can't kill your own son. Vincent met her eyes. Watch me. The cold certainty in his voice made her stomach turn. Vincent, please. I know you're angry. I know he tried to have you killed, Vivian, you specifically. This wasn't about hurting me. This was about eliminating you because he can't stand that you chose me over him. Because in his mind, if he can't have you, I don't get to either. The words hit like physical blows. Damien had tried to kill her. The man she'd married, who'd promised to love her, who she'd built a life with, had sent armed men to gun her down in a conservatory full of flowers. She was going to be sick. Vincent was beside her immediately, hand on her back as she bent double trying to breathe through the nausea. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have... He wanted me dead. Her voice sounded distant, disconnected. He looked at those men and told them where to find me and wanted me dead. Yes, because I left him. Because I chose you. Because... A laugh bubbled up, hysterical. Because I finally stopped being invisible. Vincent pulled her up, wrapped his arms around her like he could shield her from reality through sheer force of will. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to end this, and then you're never going to have to be afraid again. But Vivian was already afraid. Afraid of what Vincent would become in the name of protecting her. Afraid of what she'd already cost him just by existing. Afraid that loving him meant watching him destroy himself and everyone around them until nothing was left but ashes and regret. The next 3 weeks were a blur of violence and paranoia. Vincent's war with the Corsaro family erupted across 5 boroughs. Warehouses burned, bodies turned up in places that sent messages. The FBI investigation intensified, fueled by Damien's testimony and evidence he'd been collecting for months. Vincent barely slept. When he did, it was in the safe room with weapons in reach and security on rotating shifts. The man Vivian had fallen for, the one who quoted poetry and talked about Maria's orchids, disappeared behind a mask of cold calculation and controlled fury. She watched him slip away and couldn't stop it. The breaking point came on a January night so cold the windows had frosted opaque. Vivian was in the East Wing when she heard shouting, Vincent's voice, and someone else. She moved toward the library, her feet silent on marble. The door was cracked open. Through it, she saw Vincent with a man on his knees. Blood on the floor, a gun in Vincent's hand. Where is he? The man whimpered. I don't know, I swear, Mr. Vale, I don't. You're one of Leon's lieutenants. You know exactly where he is. Vincent cocked the gun. Tell me or I decorate the walls with your brain. Vincent. Marco's voice, careful. Maybe we should... Should what? Be reasonable? Leon sent 15 men to my home to kill the woman I love. Reasonable ended when they opened fire. Vivian's hands covered her mouth, holding back the sound that wanted to escape. This was Vincent. This was the man she'd chosen. Not the version who brought her coffee or held her while she cried or made her feel seen for the first time in years. This monster who could execute someone in his library without a flicker of hesitation. The man on his knees sobbed. Please, I have kids. So did the security guard Leon's men shot outside the conservatory. He had 3. They'll grow up without a father because your boss wanted to prove a point. Vincent pressed the gun to the man's temple. Last chance. Where is Leon Corsaro? The shipping yard. Red Hook. He's there tonight overseeing... The gunshot was deafening. Vivian ran. Didn't think, just turned and ran back to the east wing, her breath coming in ragged gasps, her vision blurring. She made it to her bathroom before she vomited, her whole body shaking. She'd known. Intellectually, she'd known what Vincent was, what he'd done, what he was capable of. But knowing and seeing were different things. Behind her, the door opened. Vincent's reflection appeared in the mirror. He'd washed the blood off his hands, but she could still see it, phantom stains that would never fully disappear. You weren't supposed to see that. Vivian couldn't look at him. But I did. I'm sorry. Are you? She turned, finally meeting his eyes. Are you actually sorry you killed that man? Or are you just sorry I watched? Vincent's jaw tightened. Both. Neither. I don't know anymore. I'm sorry you're in this situation. I'm sorry I brought you into my world. I'm sorry I'm not the man you deserve. But I'm not sorry I'm doing whatever it takes to keep you alive. Even if it destroys you? Even then. Vivian slid down the wall until she was sitting on cold tile, her knees pulled to her chest. I can't do this. Can't do what? Watch you become this. Watch you kill and scheme and turn into exactly the monster everyone thinks you are. All in the name of protecting me. Vincent knelt in front of her, forced her to look at him. I've always been a monster, Vivian. The only difference is now you're seeing it clearly. But I'm the monster who loves you. The monster who will burn the world if it means keeping you safe. And if that's not enough, if you can't live with what I am, then I'll let you go. But I won't stop hunting the people who want to hurt you. I won't stop until every threat is eliminated, whether you're here to see it or not. His words should have frightened her, should have sent her running for the nearest exit and whatever life was possible after Vincent Vale. But she was so tired of running. I love you, she whispered. And I hate that I love you. I hate that you've made me complicit in this. I hate that I'm sitting here covered in someone else's vomit because I watched you execute a man, and my first thought wasn't horror. It was worry that you'd get caught. Something in Vincent's expression softened. That's what love does. It complicates your morality, makes you capable of things you never thought possible. Like staying with a killer, like loving one. They sat there on the bathroom floor while January wind rattled the windows and the house settled around them like a living thing with secrets in every room. Finally, Vincent stood, offered his hand. Come to bed. I don't know if I can. Then just come sit with me. We don't have to, just don't be alone right now, please. Vivian took his hand because what else was there to do? They ended up in Vincent's bed, fully clothed, her back against his chest while he held her like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. I'm going after Leon tomorrow night, he said into her hair. It ends then, one way or another. What if you lose? Then Marco has instructions to get you out. New identity, new life, enough money to disappear. You'll be safe. I don't want safe if it means you're dead. Vincent's arms tightened around her. I know, but sometimes we don't get what we want. We get what we survive. Vivian turned in his arms to face him. In the darkness, his eyes looked black, haunted. Come back alive, she whispered. I'll try. That's not good enough. It's all I can promise. She kissed him, desperate and frightening and full of all the things neither of them knew how to say. He kissed her back like a man going to war, memorizing every detail before the battle. They made love slowly, carefully, like they were both made of glass and might shatter. And when it was over, Vivian lay in his arms listening to his heartbeat and wondering if this was the last time she'd ever hear it. Morning came too fast. Vincent was already dressed when she woke, strapping weapons to his body like armor. He looked like what he was, a man preparing to kill or be killed. "Stay in the house," he said without looking at her. "Marco and 6 others are staying behind. If anything happens, they get you to the safe room. If I don't come back by dawn, don't. If I don't come back, you run. No questions, no hesitation. You disappear and you don't look back." Vivian sat up, pulled the sheet around herself. "And if you do come back?" Vincent turned to face her. "Then we figure out what comes next. Together." She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe they'd actually have a next, a future, a life beyond violence and survival. But hope was a luxury neither of them could afford. Vincent crossed to her, cupped her face, kissed her once more. "I love you," he said against her mouth. "Whatever happens, remember that." Then he was gone. Vivian sat alone in his bed, in the shirt she'd stolen from his closet, surrounded by the scent of him and the weight of knowing he might not come back. The day dragged. Hours stretched like years. She tried to read, to eat, to do anything but watch the clock and imagine Vincent walking into whatever trap Leon had set. Night fell. Still no word. Midnight passed, 1 a.m. too. At 3:15 her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her hand shook as she answered. "Vincent?" "Not quite." The voice was unfamiliar, cold. "But he sends his regards. Or he would, if he wasn't currently bleeding out in a warehouse in Red Hook." Vivian's world tilted. "Who is this?" "Leon Corsaro. We should talk, Mrs. Vale, about your husband's future, or lack thereof." The line went dead. Vivian stood frozen, the phone slipping from her hand, her entire body numb. Vincent was captured, dying, and the man who'd tried to have her killed wanted to negotiate. She was out of the bedroom before conscious thought caught up. Down the stairs, through marble halls, into the library where Marco was coordinating with his remaining team. "We have to go," she said. "Now, Vincent's been taken." Marco's face went pale. "How do you—" "Leon called me. He has him. Red Hook. We have to—" "We can't. If Leon called you specifically, it's a trap. He wants you to come rushing in so he can take you both." "I don't care. I'm not leaving him there." "Mrs. Vale, I am not asking permission." Vivian's voice came out harder than she'd ever heard it. "Get me weapons, get me a car, and get me to that warehouse. Or I go alone." Marco stared at her for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition that she'd just crossed whatever line separated civilians from soldiers. "You understand this is probably suicide." "I understand Vincent would do it for me. That's all that matters." Marco's radio crackled. One of his men, voice tight with tension. "We've got movement at the south gate. 3 vehicles, armed occupants." Marco's hand went to his weapon. "How many?" "At least 15. "Leon's not waiting for us to come to him," Vivian said. "He's bringing the war here." Marco's jaw tightened. "Safe room. Now." "No. I'm done hiding." Vivian moved to the desk, opened the drawer where she knew Vincent kept a handgun. She'd watched him check it enough times. "You said Vincent taught you loyalty, taught you what's worth protecting. So protect him. Help me get him back or get out of my way." For 3 heartbeats, Marco didn't move. Then he nodded once. "Gear up. We leave in 5 minutes." Outside, headlights cut through the darkness. The final battle was coming. And Vivian Vale, literature teacher, abandoned wife, the woman who'd stumbled into a criminal empire by accident, was about to discover exactly what she was willing to become to save the man she. The gun felt heavier than Vivian expected. Cold metal against her palm, weight that meant consequence, meant crossing lines she couldn't uncross. Marco handed her a vest, Kevlar military grade, the kind that stopped bullets but not the terror flooding her veins. "Put it on, tight." Her hand shook as she strapped it across her chest. Through the library windows, headlights cut through darkness like predator eyes. The vehicles stopped at the south gate. Doors opened. Men emerged carrying weapons that looked like they belonged in war zones, not New Jersey estates. "They're not coming in yet," one of Marco's men said, voice tight. "Just watching. Psychological warfare." Marco checked his own weapon with practiced efficiency. Leon wants us scared, wants us to make mistakes. Vivian's voice came out steadier than she felt. How do we get to Vincent? We don't. Not yet. Marco pulled up a map on his tablet. Red Hook Warehouse District is 23 minutes from here, but if we leave now, Leon's men follow us. We get caught in a firefight on the highway with civilians around. People die. Cops get involved. It becomes a mess Vincent would never forgive us for. So what? We just wait? While Vincent bleeds out? Marco's jaw tightened. We wait exactly 90 seconds, long enough for my contact at NYPD to create a distraction 6 blocks from here. Traffic incident big enough to pull Leon's attention. Then we go out the back, take the service road through the woods. We'll be in Red Hook before Leon realizes we're gone. And if it doesn't work? Then we die trying. But at least we die moving forward instead of cowering in a safe room. Vivian looked at the gun in her hand. She'd never fired one. Never wanted to. The closest she'd come to violence was watching her husband, ex-husband, get punched by his father in this very room. Now she was strapping on body armor and preparing to storm a warehouse full of armed criminals. The literature teacher from Connecticut was gone. Whatever she was becoming, there was no going back from it. 30 seconds, Marco said. Outside, Leon's men spread out along the perimeter. Vivian counted 15, maybe more in the vehicles. All of them armed. All of them between her and Vincent. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. She answered before Marco could stop her. Having second thoughts, Mrs. Vale? Leon's voice, smooth as poison. Smart woman. Your husband certainly didn't. Walked right into our trap like an arrogant fool. Where is he? Alive. For now. Bleeding, but alive. I'm keeping him that way specifically so you and I can have a conversation. We're having one now. No, this is a phone call. I want a conversation face to face. You come to me alone and I let Vincent live. You don't, and I put a bullet in his head and mail pieces of him back to this mansion until you understand exactly what happens to people who cross me. Marco was shaking his head violently, mouthing no. How do I know he's alive? A pause, then Vincent's voice weak but unmistakable. Don't come. Vivian, don't. The sound of a fist hitting flesh. Vincent's grunt of pain. Still alive? Leon said. For now, you have 1 hour. Warehouse 7. Red Hook. Come alone or he dies screaming. Your choice. The line went dead. Vivian looked at Marco. Change of plans? Absolutely not. You're not walking into say, he has Vincent. I'm not debating this. You walk in there alone, you're both dead. Leon isn't interested in negotiations. He wants you terrified and compliant so he can use you against Vincent before he kills you both. Then we make him think I'm coming alone. Vivian's mind raced, adrenaline sharpening thought into something cold and clear. You said 90 seconds until the distraction, so we move now. I go in the front. You and your men go in the back. We hit them from both sides before Leon realizes what's happening. That's suicide. So is doing nothing. One of Marco's men stepped forward. She's right. We don't have time for a perfect plan. We have time for a fast one. Marco stared at Vivian for a long moment. Then he nodded once. You stay behind me until we're inside. Then you do exactly what I say, when I say it. No heroics, no improvising. Understood? Yes. And if this goes wrong, if we don't make it out, then we don't. But at least Vincent knows we tried. Marco's radio crackled, his NYPD contact. Distraction is live. You've got maybe 4 minutes before Leon's people figure it out. Move, Marco barked. They went out through the kitchen into service corridors Vivian had never seen. The house had bones beneath its elegant surface, passages for staff, for secrets, for escapes planned generations ago by people who understood that wealth meant enemies. The garage held vehicles she'd never noticed. Armored SUVs. A van with no windows. Marco pushed her into the back of one, 4 of his men piling in after. Radio silence until we're on site, he ordered, and someone get Mrs. Vale a weapon she can actually handle. One of the men handed her a smaller pistol, lighter, less intimidating. Safety's here, he said, showing her. Point and squeeze. Don't pull. Don't close your eyes. And for God's sake, don't shoot any of us. Vivian nodded, her mouth too dry for words. The vehicle lurched forward. Through tinted windows, she caught a glimpse of Leon's men at the south gate, distracted by something out of view. Then they were in the woods, headlights off, driving blind through trees that scraped against metal like skeletal fingers. The service road was barely a road, more a suggestion of one, carved through forest that pressed in from all sides. Vivian gripped the pistol, felt its weight, tried to imagine actually using it, tried to imagine shooting another human being. Vincent's face flashed through her mind. The way he looked at her like she was the first real thing he'd touched in years. The way he held her after nightmares. The way he'd killed a man in his library and then asked her to come to bed because he couldn't stand being alone. She'd shoot. If it meant saving him, she'd pull the trigger and live with the consequences. 23 minutes became 17, became 12. Red Hook materialized through the windshield. Abandoned warehouses and industrial decay. The skeleton of Brooklyn's shipping past. Most of the buildings were condemned, perfect for the kind of business that happened in the dark. Marco killed the engine 2 blocks out. On foot from here. They moved through shadows, 6 bodies pressing against chain link and crumbling brick. Vivian's breath came in white clouds. January cold bit through her clothes, but she barely felt it. Warehouse 7 loomed ahead, lights in the windows, vehicles outside, guards at the entrance. Marco counted them. 5 outside. Unknown inside. Leon's smart. He won't have Vincent anywhere near the entrance. He'll be deep in, surrounded by his best people. So how do we get to him? We don't. We make Leon bring him to us. Marco turned to one of his men. You still have those flashbangs? 4 of them. Good. Here's what we do. The plan was insane. Vivian understood that even as Marco laid it out. But insane was all they had. She was the distraction. The bait. The thing Leon wanted badly enough to leave himself exposed. She'd walk in the front, alone, hands up, surrendering. While Marco and his team breached from the back, planted explosives, and turned the warehouse into a death trap that would collapse inward on Leon's forces. And Vincent? Vivian asked. We grab him in the chaos. Get him out before the structure fails. What if we can't? Marco's expression went flat. Then we all die together. But at least we tried. It wasn't reassuring, but it was honest. They synchronized watches. Marco gave her an earpiece so small she barely felt it. 3 minutes, he said. I need 3 minutes to get in position. Then you walk. I'll tell you when. Vivian nodded. Her hands were shaking again. She forced them still. Around her, Marco's men checked weapons, murmured prayers or curses, or whatever words men used when they knew they might not see tomorrow. She wondered if Vincent's people always lived like this, on the edge of violence, one mistake from death. She wondered how Vincent had survived it for so long without losing himself completely. Except he had lost himself, piece by piece, year by year, until the only thing left was the empire and the loneliness and the desperate need for something real, until her. The earpiece crackled. We're in position, Marco whispered. South entrance is clear. Setting charges now. Vivian closed her eyes, centered herself. Thought about every terrible decision that had led her here. The bookstore, the wedding, the 4 years of slow erasure, the night she'd walked away, the moment she'd chosen Vincent. Charges set, Marco said. You're up. Walk slow. Keep them talking. We need 90 seconds to get to Vincent's location. 90 seconds. An eternity and an instant. Vivian stepped out of the shadows. The guards saw her immediately. Weapons came up. Voices shouted. She raised her hands, let the pistol dangle from one finger before dropping it to the pavement. I'm here for Leon, she called out. He's expecting me. One of the guards spoke into a radio, waited, then nodded. Inside. Hands where we can see them. They frisked her roughly, found the vest, made her remove it. Found the earpiece. Crushed it under a boot. Marco's voice cut off mid-sentence. She was alone. They pushed her through the warehouse entrance into a space that had been gutted and rebuilt into something else. Concrete floors, steel support beams, crates stacked to create corridors and rooms, a maze designed to disorient. And at the center, in a clearing lit by portable lights, Leon Corsaro waited. He was younger than Vivian expected. Mid-40s, handsome in a cold way, expensive suit that looked wrong in this industrial space. He sat in a chair like it was a throne, utterly relaxed. At his feet, on his knees with hands zip-tied behind his back, was Vincent. Blood matted his hair. His face was a mess of bruises. But his eyes, when they found hers, were alert, furious. He mouthed one word, run. Mrs. Vale. Leon smiled. Right on time. I appreciate punctuality. Vivian forced herself not to look at Vincent, not to show the horror clawing at her throat. You wanted to talk. I'm here. Let him go. Let him go. Leon laughed. You think that's how this works? You walk in, I release my prisoner, we all go home. You said, I said a lot of things. I say a lot of things. Words are cheap, Mrs. Vale. Actions matter. And the action I'm interested in is watching Vincent Vale realize that loving you was the mistake that finally destroyed him. Leon stood, moved closer to Vincent, pressed a gun to his temple. Vincent didn't flinch, just kept his eyes locked on Vivian. I could kill him right now, Leon said conversationally. Put a bullet in his brain and end 30 years of his empire building in 1 second. But where's the poetry in that? Where's the lesson? What lesson? Vivian's voice came out steadier than her racing heart. That power without ruthlessness is just privilege waiting to be taken. Vincent got soft, started caring about things beyond the empire, started believing love was stronger than fear. Leon cocked the gun. He was wrong, and you're about to prove it. From somewhere deep in the warehouse, a muffled explosion. The building shuddered. Men shouted. Gunfire erupted. Marco's team. Leon's head snapped toward the sound. For 1 second, his attention divided. Vincent moved. Even injured, even on his knees, he was fast. His shoulder drove into Leon's legs, taking him down. The gun went off, bullet punching into concrete where Vincent's head had been. Run! Vincent screamed at Vivian. She didn't run. She lunged for the pistol one of Leon's guards had dropped, came up firing. The shot went wide. So did the second. The third hit a guard in the shoulder, spinning him around. The warehouse descended into chaos. Marco's team poured in from the south, flashbangs turning the space into a strobe-lit nightmare. Leon's men returned fire. Bullets ricocheted off steel beams. Someone was screaming. Vivian dove behind a crate, her hand shaking so hard she could barely hold the gun. She'd shot someone. Actually shot someone. The guard was down, clutching his shoulder, blood pouring between his fingers. She was going to be sick. Vivian! Marco's voice somewhere in the smoke. Where's Vincent? Center! Leon has him! More gunfire. An explosion louder than the first. Part of the warehouse roof groaned. Vivian forced herself to move. Low and fast, the way she'd seen in movies, praying bullets didn't find her. She reached Vincent as he struggled with his zip ties, his wrists raw and bleeding from effort. Knife, he gasped. Back pocket. Hurry! Her hands fumbled, but found it. She sawed through plastic while the battle raged around them. The moment he was free, Vincent grabbed her, pulled her down as bullets chewed through the crate above their heads. I told you not to come. When have I ever listened to you? Despite everything, the blood, the gunfire, the building collapsing around them, Vincent laughed, raw and painful and real. Marco, he shouted. Status! South exit's compromised. Fire spreading. We need to move now. Vincent grabbed a weapon from a fallen guard, checked the magazine. Can you run? Can you? I'll manage. Stay behind me. Don't stop. Don't look back. They ran. The warehouse was a maze of fire and smoke. Bodies littered the floor. Leon's men, Marco's. Impossible to tell which was which. The heat was intense, flames consuming everything, turning steel beams into glowing skeletons. Marco appeared through the smoke, 4 of his team with him. This way, loading dock. They followed, Vivian's lungs burning, her eyes streaming. Behind them, Leon's voice. You can't run from me, Vincent. I'll find you. I'll find her. His words cut off in a scream as something collapsed. Vivian didn't look back. The loading dock appeared like salvation. Cold air rushed in through the open bay doors. They tumbled out into January night, gasping, choking on smoke. Vehicles are 2 blocks north, Marco said. Move before... Gunfire from the warehouse entrance. Leon's remaining men pursuing despite the flames. Go! Vincent shoved Vivian toward Marco. Get her out! Not without you. That wasn't a request. More gunfire. Closer. A bullet whined past Vivian's ear, so close she felt the displacement of air. Vincent returned fire, covering their retreat. They made it to the vehicles, piled in. The driver floored it before the doors were fully closed. Through the rear window, Vivian watched Warehouse 7 burn. Flames reached toward the sky like accusing fingers. Emergency sirens wailed in the distance. And somewhere in that inferno, Leon Corsaro was either dead or hunting them through the smoke. Did we? Vivian couldn't finish the sentence. Don't know, Marco said grimly, but we can't assume he's dead until we see a body. Vincent slumped in his seat, his face gray with pain and exhaustion. Blood seeped through his shirt from wounds Vivian couldn't see. You need a hospital. Can't. Too many questions. Elena knows a doctor. Former military. Discreet. He looked at her, really looked at her. You shot someone. I know. You came for me. After everything. After seeing what I really am. I know. Vincent's hand found hers, gripped it like a lifeline. I love you. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry I dragged you into this. Sorry you had to... Don't. Vivian squeezed his hand. Don't apologize for me choosing you. I made that choice. I live with it. The vehicle raced through Brooklyn, through neighborhoods that looked normal, peaceful, unaware that a war had just erupted blocks away. By the time they reached the estate, dawn was threatening the eastern horizon. Elena waited at the entrance with a man Vivian didn't recognize, medical bag already open. They carried Vincent to his bedroom. The doctor worked quickly, cleaning wounds, stitching gashes, murmuring about broken ribs and possible internal bleeding. Vivian stood in the corner, still wearing clothes that smelled like smoke and blood, watching the man she loved get pieced back together. Marco appeared in the doorway. We've got a problem. Another one? Vivian's laugh was brittle. Damien's missing. He was supposed to meet with Leon tonight. After the warehouse burned, we sent someone to his apartment. He's gone. No clothes, no passport, nothing. He ran. Vincent's eyes opened. Let him run. He's still talking to the feds. I said let him run. Vincent's voice was weak but absolute. My son made his choice. He chose revenge over family. Let him live with it. Wherever he goes, he'll know he destroyed himself for nothing. The doctor stepped back. That's all I can do here. He needs rest. Real rest. No stress? No. He looked around at the armed men, the atmosphere of barely controlled violence. Know whatever this is, or he won't make it to next week. Marco escorted the doctor out. Elena changed the bandages with practiced efficiency, then left Vivian alone with Vincent. She moved to the bed, sat carefully beside him. You should sleep. So should you. Neither of them moved. Outside, the sun crept above the horizon. Light spilled through windows onto a room that had seen too much pain, too much violence. Vincent's hand found hers again. It's not over. Leon's still out there. The FBI investigation is still moving forward. Damien's testimony is still... I know. We might lose everything. The empire, the estate, our freedom. I might end up in prison. You might... I know. Vincent fell silent. Then, why did you come for me? Really? You could have run. Taken the money I offered months ago. Disappeared into whatever life was still possible. Vivian thought about the question. About the woman she'd been when she first walked into this mansion. Broken. Invisible. Convinced she deserved the loneliness Damien had given her. And the woman she'd become. Someone who'd fired a gun. Stormed a warehouse. Chosen a criminal over safety because love didn't calculate risk. Because you saw me, she said finally. When I was invisible to everyone else, you looked at me and saw someone worth saving, even if it meant destroying yourself. How could I do anything less for you? Vincent's eyes filled. He pulled her down, kissed her with lips split and swollen but still gentle. Whatever happens next, he whispered against her mouth. I want you to know, these months with you were worth every consequence. Worth the war. Worth losing everything, because you made me remember what it felt like to be human. Vivian curled against him, careful of his injuries, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Strong, steady, alive. We're going to survive this, she said. How can you be sure? Because we already survived the worst part. We survived being alone. Everything else is just details. Vincent's arms tightened around her. Outside, the estate came to life. Guards changing shifts, Elena preparing breakfast, the machinery of Vincent's empire grinding forward despite everything. But in this room, in this moment, There was only them. Two broken people who'd found each other in the wreckage and decided that was enough. The war wasn't over. Leon was still hunting them. The FBI was still closing in. Damien's betrayal still echoed through every choice they'd make going forward. But they were together, and somehow, impossibly, that felt like winning. Vincent's breathing evened out, sleep claiming him despite the pain. Vivian stayed awake, watching light creep across the room, waiting for whatever came next. She'd stopped being the invisible wife. She'd become something else entirely. Something dangerous, something fierce, something willing to fight for the life she'd chosen even if the whole world called it wrong. She'd become Vincent Vale's equal, and she'd burn the city down before she let anyone take him from her again. Vincent slept for 14 hours straight while the world burned around them. Federal agents arrived at the estate gates at 7 a.m. demanding entry based on warrants they claimed existed but couldn't produce. Marco turned them away with the kind of polite menace that came from years of practice. By noon, 3 news vans had set up outside the property, cameras trained on windows like voyeurs hoping for tragedy. Vivian watched it all from Vincent's bedroom window, a cup of coffee going cold in her hands. The doctor had left instructions: rest, fluids, no stress. As if stress was optional when the FBI was circling and a rival crime lord was either dead or planning his next attack from whatever hole he'd crawled into. She'd tried to sleep. Managed maybe 90 minutes before nightmares dragged her back to consciousness. The warehouse burning, the guard she'd shot clutching his shoulder, Vincent on his knees with a gun to his head. The coffee tasted like ash, but she drank it anyway. Behind her, Vincent stirred. She turned to find him watching her, his face still a mess of bruises, but his eyes clear. How long? 14 hours. How do you feel? Like I got beaten half to death, and then dragged through a burning building. He tried to sit up, winced, fell back. So about normal. Despite everything, Vivian smiled. The doctor said you need rest. The doctor doesn't know my life. What's happening? She told him. The feds, the media, Marco holding the perimeter. No word on Leon. His body hadn't been found in the warehouse wreckage, which meant he was either ash or alive and hunting. Vincent listened without interrupting, his face going harder with each detail. He's alive, he said when she finished. Leon's too smart to die in a fire he didn't plan. He got out, which means this isn't over. I know. And the FBI won't stop. Damien gave them enough to keep digging. Even without Leon, we're looking at indictments, trials, prison time. I know that too. Vincent's hand found hers, gripped it. You can still walk away. Right now, before the walls close in. Marco can get you out, set you up somewhere they'll never find you. You'd be free. Vivian looked at their joined hands. His knuckles were bruised, bandaged. Hers were clean, but somehow felt just as damaged. I shot a man 2 nights ago. I watched you kill someone in this house. I participated in a raid that probably killed a dozen people and definitely destroyed a city block. Walking away doesn't make me innocent, Vincent. It just makes me a coward. It makes you smart. I've never been accused of that. She squeezed his hand. I'm staying. Whatever comes next, we face it together. Something in Vincent's expression cracked. Relief, maybe. Or resignation that she was exactly as stubborn as he was. Then we need to plan. Leon's going to come at us hard and fast. He'll use the FBI investigation as cover, hit us while we're distracted. We need... The bedroom door burst open. Marco, his face white. Turn on the news. Now. Vivian grabbed the remote. Every channel showed the same thing. Breaking news, aerial footage of the Red Hook warehouse still smoldering. And then a press conference. Leon Corsaro stood at a podium looking polished and unharmed, flanked by lawyers who probably cost more per hour than most people made in a month, deeply disturbed by the violence perpetrated by the Vale organization. I was conducting legitimate business in that warehouse when armed men stormed the building and opened fire. I barely escaped with my life. You son of a bitch, Vincent breathed. Mr. Corsaro, are you saying Vincent Vale tried to kill you? Leon's expression was pure wounded innocence. I'm saying I've provided federal investigators with evidence of the Vale family's criminal activities spanning 3 decades. Vincent Vale is a dangerous man who believes he's above the law. Last night proved he'll stop at nothing, including mass murder, to silence anyone who threatens his empire. The reporter pushed forward. What about reports that you and Mr. Vale have been engaged in a territorial war? There is no war. There's a criminal trying to eliminate legitimate businessmen who refuse to participate in his illegal activities. I'm cooperating fully with the FBI. I trust they'll bring Mr. Vale to justice before anyone else gets hurt. The press conference continued, but Vivian had stopped listening. Leon had flipped the narrative completely, made himself the victim, made Vincent the aggressor. And with the warehouse raid fresh in everyone's mind, witnesses, bodies, destruction, the FBI would have everything they needed to move fast. How long? Vincent asked Marco. Hours. Maybe less. If Leon's already given his deposition, if the warrants are ready, then we don't have time for subtle. Vincent forced himself upright, ignoring the pain that turned his face gray. Get everyone here. Senior people only. We're having a family meeting. Vincent, you need to rest. I'll rest when I'm dead, which will be in a federal supermax if we don't move now. Go. Marco went. Vincent stood slowly, made it 3 steps before his legs buckled. Vivian caught him, half carried him to the bathroom. I'm fine. You're dying. There's a difference. I'm not dying. I'm just... He caught sight of himself in the mirror and stopped. The bruises had darkened overnight. He looked like he'd gone 10 rounds with someone twice his size. He looked breakable. I need to shower. Need to look like I'm in control when they get here. Vivian started the water, helped him out of bandages and clothes sticky with dried blood. The wounds underneath were ugly, stitches across his ribs, a deep gash on his shoulder, bruises that covered most of his torso like someone had used him for target practice. But he was alive. She helped him into the shower, steadied him when the hot water made him sway, washed blood and smoke from his hair with hands that shook slightly. This man had killed for her, had nearly died for her, had built his entire empire on violence and power and the ruthless elimination of threats. And she loved him anyway. Maybe that made her a monster too. Or maybe it just made her human. 20 minutes later, Vincent stood in front of his closet, dressed in a fresh suit, looking almost like himself again. The bruises were harder to hide, but he wore them like armor. How do I look? Like someone who should be in bed. So convincing enough. He turned to her. What I'm about to do, the people I'm bringing in, you need to understand that once you're in that room, there's no pretending you don't know what this family really is. You'll be complicit, legally, morally, every way that matters. I've been complicit since I stayed, since I chose you, since I pulled that trigger. Vincent cupped her face, kissed her gently. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. They went downstairs together. The library had filled with men Vivian had never seen. Hard faces, expensive suits, the kind of people who made careers out of operating in shadows. They stood when Vincent entered, a gesture of respect that felt almost ceremonial. Marco closed the doors, posted guards outside. Vincent moved to the head of the table, Vivian beside him. The room went silent. Leon Corsaro is trying to destroy this family using the federal government as a weapon, Vincent said without preamble. He's painted himself as a victim and me as a murderer. The FBI will be here within hours with warrants. They'll seize everything, freeze our accounts, arrest anyone they think can give them information. One of the men spoke up. So we run? No. Running makes us look guilty. We stay. We cooperate. We give them exactly nothing they can use. They have Damien's testimony. Damien knows surface details, shipping schedules, money transfers that can be explained as legitimate business. He was never trusted with real information because even before he turned, I knew he was weak. Vincent's hands gripped the table edge. But we need to be smart. Certain operations need to go dark permanently. Certain people need to disappear until this blows over. And certain deals, he looked at each man in turn, certain deals need to be made. The room shifted uncomfortably. What kind of deals? Marco asked carefully. The kind where I trade information on our rivals to the FBI in exchange for immunity for everyone in this room. The kind where the Vale Empire becomes legitimate overnight. Every dirty dollar washed clean, every questionable operation shut down or sold off. The kind where we sacrifice the kingdom to save the people who built it. Silence crashed down like a wave. You're talking about turning, one of the older men said, his voice tight. Cooperating. I'm talking about surviving. Leon's already cooperating. Damien's been cooperating for months. If we don't get ahead of this, we all go down. But if we move first, if we give the FBI bigger fish to fry, they'll let us walk. Some of us, the ones who were never directly involved in violence, the ones who can claim they were just businessmen who didn't ask questions. Vincent's jaw tightened. I won't. I'm too dirty. I've made too many decisions that can't be explained away. But you, all of you can walk if you're willing to let me fall. Another silence, heavier this time. Marco stepped forward. No, we don't abandon you. That's not how this family works. It's exactly how it works if I order it. Vincent's voice went hard. I'm giving you an out. Take it. Let the empire die with me. Build something clean with whatever comes next. And what about you? Vincent glanced at Vivian. I'll figure something out. I always do. The meeting lasted 2 more hours. Plans were made. Assets were distributed. People were given instructions on where to go, what to say, how to disappear if necessary. By the time the room emptied, Vincent looked ready to collapse. But he stayed standing, walked Vivian back upstairs, collapsed on the bed fully dressed. That's it then, she said quietly. The empire ends. The empire ended the moment I chose you over power. This is just paperwork. Do you regret it? Vincent pulled her down beside him. I regret a lot of things. The people I've hurt, the lines I've crossed, the man I became in the name of survival. But choosing you? Never. Not for a second. Vivian rested her head on his chest, listened to his heartbeat. It seemed impossible that this man, this criminal, this killer, had become her entire world. But impossible things happened every day. The FBI arrived at 4 p.m. Vivian watched from the upstairs window as a convoy of black SUVs rolled through the gates. Agents emerged like ants, swarming across the property with warrants and weapons and the absolute certainty of people who believed they were on the right side of history. Vincent stood beside her, calm in a way that felt practiced. They'll want to search everything, question everyone, take me in for processing. I'm coming with you. No, you stay here. Answer their questions honestly. Tell them you're just the daughter-in-law. You didn't know what the family business really was. Play the innocent victim. I'm not leaving you. Vivian, I said I'm not leaving you, so either I come as your lawyer or your witness or your... She stopped. Your wife. Vincent turned to face her. We're not married. We could be. Right now. Before they take you. Marco can witness. It'll be legal enough. That would make you complicit in ways you can't take back. I don't want to take it back. I want... Her voice caught. I want to be yours. Legally. Officially. So when they drag you away, you know someone's fighting to bring you home. Vincent's eyes filled. He pulled her against him, kissed her like the world was ending. Maybe it was. Marco, he called. Marco appeared in the doorway, took one look at them and understood. You're serious. Find a judge, someone who owes us, someone who can make it legal, and do it in the next... Vincent checked his watch. 20 minutes. Marco grinned. I know just the guy. 17 minutes later, a retired judge who'd made a career of looking the other way arrived through the kitchen entrance. He looked nervous but determined. They stood in the library, Vincent and Vivian, Marco as witness, Elena watching from the doorway with tears streaming down her face. The vows were simple. No poetry. No promises they couldn't keep, just the legal minimum spoken quickly while federal agents searched the house around them. Do you, Vincent Michael Vale, take this woman? I do. And do you, Vivian Marie Hale, take this man? I do. Then by the power still technically vested in me, I pronounce you married. God help you both. Vincent slid a ring on her finger. His mother's, Elena whispered later, the one thing Maria had wanted him to keep. Then he kissed his wife while federal agents pounded on the library door. Mr. Vale, FBI, open up. Vincent pulled back, rested his forehead against Vivian's. Whatever happens, remember I love you. Remember you saved me in ways that have nothing to do with warehouses or bullets. You made me want to be better. Vincent... He stepped back, straightened his suit, and opened the door. 6 agents rushed in, weapons drawn. Vincent Vale, you're under arrest for racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy to commit murder. The charges kept coming. They cuffed him roughly, read him his rights. Vivian stood frozen, watching the man she'd just married get dragged away in handcuffs. One of the agents turned to her. Mrs. Vale? We have questions for you too. She lifted her chin. I want my lawyer present. That's your right. But you should know, cooperation now could save you a lot of trouble later. I'll take my chances with trouble. The interrogation lasted 6 hours. They tried everything. Threats, promises, playing good cop and cops who just seemed tired. Vivian told them the truth. She'd married Damien. The marriage failed. She'd left. Vincent had offered her protection during the divorce. She'd accepted. She didn't know what his business involved. She'd never asked. She was just trying to survive. It was mostly true. The lies lived in what she didn't say. They released her at midnight with instructions not to leave the state. Marco drove her back to the estate in silence. Inside, the house felt empty, ransacked, every drawer pulled out, every painting checked for safes, every floorboard tested for hollows. But the damage was surface level. The real treasures, Maria's garden, the library where she'd first kissed Vincent, the bedroom where they'd made love and promises, those remained untouched. Vivian climbed the stairs to Vincent's room, lay down in his bed, breathed in the scent of him still clinging to the pillows, and cried for the first time since this whole nightmare started. The trial took 11 months to assemble. Vincent was held without bail, flight risk, they said, given his resources. Vivian visited him every week in a federal detention center that looked like every movie prison she'd ever seen. They talked through glass, phones pressed to ears, 30 minutes that never felt like enough. He looked thinner each time, harder. The softness she'd found in him was being slowly ground away by concrete and isolation, but he never broke. How's the garden? He asked during one visit. Elena and I are keeping it alive. The orchids are blooming. Maria would have liked you, would have liked us. I wish I could have known her. You would have been friends, both of you too stubborn to know when to quit. Vivian's laugh came out wet. The trial starts in 2 weeks. I know. Vincent, if you cooperate, if you give them what they want. I did. I've been cooperating for months, trading information on every rival family from here to Boston. The FBI has enough to dismantle half the organized crime on the East Coast. He paused. But it won't save me. I did too much. Know too much. The best I can hope for is a reduced sentence, maybe 20 years instead of life. 20 years. He'd be almost 80 when he got out. Vivian would be 54. A lifetime. Then we fight, she said fiercely. We fight until there's nothing left to fight with. Vincent's smile was sad. I love that you believe we can win. We have to. I didn't marry a criminal just to grow old alone. You married me because you're just as damaged as I am, just as willing to burn everything down for the people you love. Is that what we are? Damaged? We're survivors. That's close enough. The prosecution's case was damning. Damien testified for 3 days, laying out everything he knew about the Vale family operations. Financial records supported his testimony. Witnesses, people Vincent had trusted, corroborated details. The defense fought back hard. Character witnesses who spoke to Vincent's philanthropy. Evidence of the charity work he'd done. Arguments that much of what he was accused of was actually done by subordinates without his knowledge. It wasn't enough. The jury deliberated for 4 days. Vivian sat in the courtroom every single day, wearing the ring Vincent had given her, making sure he saw at least one friendly face in the crowd. When the verdict came back, she held her breath. Guilty. On 14 counts. The sentencing took another 2 months. Vincent stood before the judge who would decide his fate, his hands cuffed, his suit immaculate despite months in detention. The judge read the charges, the evidence, the aggravating factors. Then the sentence, 25 years, eligible for parole in 17. Vincent's face didn't change, but Vivian saw his hands clench. 17 years minimum. She'd be 51. He'd be 74. They let him out. He looked back once, found her in the crowd, mouthed 3 words. I love you. She mouthed them back. Then he was gone. 6 months after Vincent went to prison, Leon Corsaro died in a car accident on the West Side Highway. The official report said brake failure, a tragic accident. Marco told Vivian the truth over coffee in the estate kitchen. One of Vincent's people, someone Leon never saw coming, payback for the warehouse, for everything. Vincent ordered it from prison? Vincent's reach doesn't end at prison walls. Leon should have known that. Vivian should have been horrified, should have felt something beyond the cold satisfaction that settled in her chest. Instead, she just nodded. Good. Damien vanished completely. Witness protection, probably, or just the natural consequence of burning every bridge and making enemies of everyone who'd once protected him. Vivian didn't waste energy hating him. He'd destroyed himself more thoroughly than she ever could. The estate became hers by default. Vincent had signed everything over before the trial, ensuring the FBI couldn't seize it as criminal proceeds. She rattled around in it for a few months before deciding that living in a mausoleum wasn't living at all. She sold it to a tech billionaire who wanted the prestige of owning a piece of New York history. Used the money to start a foundation, the Maria and Vincent Vale Foundation for Second Chances. Programs for at-risk youth, scholarships for kids from broken homes, support for families affected by incarceration, turning blood money into something clean. She visited Vincent every month. They talked about the foundation, about the garden she'd had transplanted to a community center in Brooklyn, about the life they'd build when he got out, if he got out. Neither of them said the quiet part, that 17 years was a long time, that people changed, that love was fragile, and distance could kill it as surely as bullets. But they kept visiting anyway, kept calling, kept believing in a future that felt more like fantasy than plan. 5 years became 7, became 10. Vivian built a life, ran the foundation, made peace with being alone without being lonely, dated occasionally, nothing serious, nothing that threatened the ring she still wore. Vincent aged in prison. Letters became shorter. Visits became harder as his health declined. The man who'd been so vital, so powerful, became a ghost of himself behind concrete and razor wire. But he never broke, and she never stopped visiting. Year 14, something shifted. Vincent's lawyer called with news. A cooperation agreement he'd signed years ago was finally paying dividends. Federal prosecutors were recommending early release based on his continued assistance with ongoing investigations. 3 years. Maybe less if the parole board approved. Vivian let herself hope for the first time in over a decade. Year 16, the parole hearing, the parole. She testified, talked about the foundation, about the man Vincent had been before prison, about the man he could still become. The board deliberated for 6 weeks, then approved. Vincent Michael Vale was released on a cold March morning, 17 years after he'd been sentenced. Vivian waited outside the prison gates in a car Elena had helped her prepare. Vintage, restored, the kind Vincent had always loved. She almost didn't recognize him when he walked out. 73 years old, gray-haired, thinner than she remembered, moving carefully like his body had become something he didn't fully trust, but alive and free. He stopped when he saw her, just stood there in the parking lot staring like he couldn't quite believe she was real. She got out of the car. They met in the middle. No words. Just his arms around her and 17 years of absence collapsing into one perfect moment. "You waited," he whispered into her hair. "Of course I waited. I'm your wife." Vincent pulled back to look at her. She was 51 now, older, lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before, gray threading through hair she'd stopped dyeing years ago. She was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. "I don't have an empire anymore. I don't have money or power or anything I used to give you." "Good. I never wanted those things. I just wanted you." They drove to Brooklyn, to the community center that had once been an empty warehouse. Inside, Maria's garden thrived under glass, orchids and roses, and life growing in a space that had been dead. Vincent stood in front of it and wept. "She'd be proud of you," Vivian said quietly, "of what you built from the ashes." "I didn't build it. You did. We built it, together, even when you weren't here." They bought a small house in Queens. Nothing fancy, just 3 bedrooms and a yard where Vincent could plant flowers without armed guards watching. He learned how to be normal, how to grocery shop and take the subway and exist in a world that had moved on without him. Some days were harder than others. Prison had left marks that didn't show. Nightmares, paranoia, a startle reflex that made him jump at loud noises. But Vivian was patient, and slowly, impossibly, they built something new. Not a criminal empire, not power or fear or control, just a life. Vincent volunteered at the foundation, working with kids who reminded him of who he'd been. Angry, lost, convinced violence was the only language the world understood. He showed them different paths, different choices. Vivian watched him transform from the man who'd killed without hesitation into someone who fought to save lives instead of taking them. Redemption was possible. It just cost everything. 3 years after his release, they renewed their vows in Maria's garden. Elena was there. Marco, retired now, but still loyal. A few of the Foundation kids. No press. No spectacle. Just two people who'd survived hell and chosen each other anyway. The officiator asked if Vincent had vows prepared. He pulled out a folded piece of paper, hands shaking slightly. Vivian, 17 years ago, you married me in a library while federal agents pounded on the door. You promised to love a man who didn't deserve it, who'd never deserved anything good in his life, and then you spent nearly 2 decades proving that promise meant something. His voice cracked. You could have walked away. Should have walked away. But you stayed, you visited, you built something beautiful out of the ruins I left behind. You showed me that love isn't about power or possession or control. It's about choosing someone every single day, even when, especially when, it's hard. Tears streamed down his face. I don't know what I did to deserve you, but I'm going to spend whatever time I have left trying to be worthy of the faith you had in me. I love you. I'll always love you. Thank you for waiting. Vivian's turn. She didn't have prepared words. Didn't need them. Vincent, you saw me when I was invisible. You made me feel real when I'd forgotten how. You gave me the strength to fight for myself, for you, for the life we've built. I don't regret a single choice I made. Not walking away, not shooting that gun, not standing beside you through trials and prison and years of not knowing if we'd make it to this moment. She took his hands. You're not the man you were. Neither am I. We're better. Scarred, but better. And I wouldn't change any of it because the woman I was couldn't have loved you this deeply. Only the woman I became could do that. So thank you for breaking me down and helping me rebuild into someone stronger. They kissed while the garden bloomed around them and the late afternoon sun painted everything gold. 2 broken people made whole, 2 survivors who'd fought their way to peace. That night, in their small house in Queens, Vincent sat on the back porch watching Vivian tend to the roses she'd planted in Maria's honor. She looked up, caught him watching, smiled. What are you thinking about? How I almost lost this. All of it. You. But you didn't. No. Because you're as stubborn as I am. Vivian crossed to him, settled into his lap like they were teenagers instead of people in their 70s. His arms wrapped around her automatically. Any regrets? She asked. Vincent thought about it, really thought. About the empire he'd lost, the years in prison, the violence and fear and blood that had paved his path. About the lonely man he'd been before a woman in emerald silk had walked away from her marriage and into his library. Just one, he said finally. What? That I didn't meet you sooner. That we wasted so much time on people and things that didn't matter. He kissed her temple. But I'm grateful for every moment we had, every moment we still have. Vivian curled against him, listening to his heartbeat, slower than it used to be, but still strong, still here. Me too. They sat in comfortable silence while the sun set and the city hummed beyond their fence and the world spun on without needing their drama or violence or pain. Just 2 people who'd loved badly and learned better, who'd burned down empires and built gardens in the ashes, who'd chosen each other over safety, over sense, over everything the world said they should want, and somehow, impossibly, that had been enough. Vincent Michael Vale died peacefully in his sleep on a Tuesday morning 5 years later, Vivian's hand in his, Maria's garden visible through the window. He was 78. She was 56. At his funeral, the Foundation kids spoke about the man who'd mentored them. Elena wept. Marco stood stoic in the back. The cemetery was small, the gathering smaller. No empire, no spectacle, no power, just the people whose lives he'd touched after he'd stopped trying to own them. They buried him next to Maria. Finally at peace with both women who'd loved him enough to save pieces of his soul. Vivian stood at the grave long after everyone left, one hand on each headstone. Thank you, she whispered to Maria's stone, for teaching him how to love before I met him, for making him capable of being saved. The wind rustled through trees. If she believed in signs, she might have called it an answer.
She went home, to the house they'd built, to the garden they'd tended, to the life they'd made from ruins and regret and the stubborn refusal to give up on each other. And she lived, ran the foundation, mentored kids who reminded her of herself, lost, invisible, convinced they didn't matter, showed them they did. Years later, a young woman came to her office. 19, scared, in a marriage that was suffocating her but convinced she had no way out. Vivian listened, recognized herself in every word. "You can leave," she said gently. "It feels impossible, but it's not. I know because I did it." What if I can't survive alone? Vivian thought about the night she'd walked away from Damien, about Vincent's voice on the phone promising protection, about every choice that had led her from that moment to this one. You won't be alone. There are people who'll help, who'll see you. You just have to be brave enough to ask. She squeezed the girl's hand. And trust me, you're braver than you know. We all are. We just forget sometimes. The girl left with resources, numbers, hope. Vivian watched her go and thought about Vincent, about Maria, about everyone who'd fought to become more than their circumstances tried to make them. Survival wasn't pretty. Love wasn't simple. Redemption cost everything and promised nothing. But it was possible. It was always possible. As long as you were willing to fight for it. Vivian Marie Vale lived to 91, long enough to see the foundation expand across 3 states, long enough to dance at Elena's grandson's wedding, long enough to become the grandmother to dozens of kids who'd found family in the program she built. When her time came, it was gentle, surrounded by people who loved her, pictures of Vincent on the nightstand, Maria's ring still on her finger. Her last words were whispered to a nurse who barely heard them. "I'm coming. Tell him I'm coming." They buried her between Vincent and Maria. 3 people who'd loved messily and learned slowly and built something beautiful despite everything. The foundation continued. The garden thrived. The kids they'd saved went on to save others. And somewhere in the infinite, 3 souls finally rested, no longer haunted by empires or choices or the weight of survival, just at peace, together. Finally, whole. The end. This has been a story about love and violence and the cost of choosing who you become, about invisible women finding their voices, about powerful men learning gentleness, about gardens growing in the ruins of empires. Thank you for following Vivian and Vincent's journey to the end.